So, hello and welcome to the first JMAC podcast ever. Two men and a bell. Your host
One and a half
today.
1.5 men and a bell.
It's two men and a bell. Your hosts are myself, Christopher Winters, and Joseph Cruikshank.
Good morning. Oh yeah, and the sorry task of introducing a very special guest for today falls to me. So, we are joined by local thespian, star of the worldwide acclaimed film The Bravest Rescue, Mr. Luke Stevenson.
Hi.
Only murdered a few people. And our very special guest, Victoria, who we invited on. It's found out is a surprisingly good artist recently. Nothing on that. Who is Polish.
Hi.
It's nice. And an EU national, and I thought we'd give some very good insight into our discussion today.
Yes, today's episode is entitled How Much Brexit Do You Like on Your Toast? No prizes for guessing what today's topic might be.
Butterflies.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I agree.
So I will be attempting to mediate this sorry bunch, and I thought I would start by getting everybody's opinion across. So, Mr. Winters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That joke is not going to get old.
Definitely not made it about 17 times before this recording started.
Yeah.
Nothing of the sort.
My view is that Britain should remain in the EU, and that is going along the party lines that I am with, but it's also my personal view. Also to extenuate, just before we ask the special guests, any views expressed in this podcast are the personal views of the people. They do not represent the views of St Aidan's High, North Lanarkshire Council, or any other organisation in which they may represent.
Damn commies.
So on that note, let's start with Mr. Stevenson. What are your opinions on this whole Brexit thing?
Funny you should ask. We need to go. It's like...
So you're pro-leave?
Pro-leave. It's like... To me, it's like a building's on fire. You don't stand in the middle of it while it's coming down.
Fair enough.
You get out.
Fair enough. So, and Victoria?
My opinion is that we should stay because the country is a strong country that it should stay in Europe because it's very well listened to, in my opinion. Although I don't have a political party to, view it upon.
Ben too. So I thought I'd start casting your minds back to, when was it? 23rd of June 2016, when, some would say this whole tobacco began. Britain chose to leave the EU, and the question I'm going to pose to you is, were we aware of all the consequences that brought to us? Anyone like to start? Victoria?
I didn't know about Brexit back then when it happened. Like, I didn't know what it was going to bring as a consequence. Like, I was like, oh, Brexit, okay, cool. I don't know what that is. But then when I kind of started learning about it and how it would affect me as a person and how I would probably get basically deported from this country if I didn't apply, then it was kind of like, ooh, great. This is not going well.
Fair enough. I'll let you revert. What do you think on this?
I'd be very careful what you read, because certain media outlets are geared towards to try and make you believe a certain way.
You wouldn't be about to insinuate that any...
wouldn't be about to insinuate that any newspaper article, Telegraph, or any news outlet, BBC News, would try and do such a thing. But just be careful about what you read and hear.
That's why you watch Sky News or our good friends Fox.
Oh, God bless Tucker Carlson. I could eat him with a spoon. But when you think about it, that vote was brought about by the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, basically saying if the British people want to vote for the EU, for us to leave the EU, then we'll give them that opportunity for the referendum. I myself don't want it. But surely if you were smart enough to think that quite a lot of people wanted this, but you didn't want it, would you not do the actual politician thing and not have the vote? Because if It was them that got us into this mess. But the British people voted, and it was
Them as in
it was,
the Conservative Party.
yeah, the Conservative Party.
Okay.
But the British people have voted, and we voted to leave. Some of us most of Scotland voted to stay. Most in Northern Ireland voted to stay, but I think Wales and the majority of England voted to leave.
Yeah, Wales, England voted to leave. Gibraltar, Northern Ireland, and Scotland had the majority vote for remain.
Okay, fair enough. But I find that we weren't aware of the consequences of what was happening, because one side were like, oh, we're going to go into a Great Depression, we're all going to die. And then the other side were like, oh, we're going to get £300 billion and bang it into the NHS.
The battle bus.
The battle bus. But the thing is, neither side were actually being honest, because we can't predict what could happen. It's like, oh, we might have like a bit of a recession, but then our economy could come back up. Or, oh, our economy will be fine for a while, but then it'll crash. Like, no one can make that prediction.
It's unpredictable.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
So, a lot of fear-mongering was used on both sides to try and get votes. And I think a lot of people that voted Remain were scared that the economy was just going to die if we left the EU. But then again, in the same vein, I think a lot of people on my side of the spectrum were kind of steered towards voting to leave because of, like, oh, they're coming here, they're taking our jobs, they're living on the dole, they're doing this, they're doing that.
We need to build a wall.
Okay, no.
Trump's not that bad,
Okay.
but
That's another topic.
well, next week. But the whole thing is, there wasn't enough of a conversation about it to actually. Not a lot of people were actually informed about what they were voting on and why they were voting for it. And I myself was a Remainer at that point, but I have since changed, because when I've done my own research, I've managed to form my own opinion. I'd only voted to stay because I'd heard people around me thinking the world was going to end, so I decided that it might as well end with me as well.
Well, that's a quite interesting segue, since you're just discussing, you mentioned David Cameron's resignation. Since his resignation, do you think the Conservative Party and the British government have handled this situation well? Christopher, you have spoken first now.
No.
Short and simple.
Just plain and simple, no. If you just need to watch some of the debates going on at Westminster just now, it's mental. None of them know what they were doing. Then you also had the snap general election halfway through the Brexit process, which May thought, oh, this is going to completely strengthen my position in the EU, I'll look so strong.
No, weakened it.
And it got worse. She lost seats. She lost her majority in Parliament. She's only propped up because she found the magic money tree and paid off the DUP, which is well documented. £1.5 billion went straight to Northern Ireland to get the DUP in her back pocket. That's what's kept her in a job. You just need to remember in the votes of no confidence that have been in against her. It's the DUP that kept her there. I'm sure if they had have asked nicely, Sinn Féin might have showed up to Parliament to vote her out.
I doubt
just
it.
might. But sadly they didn't do so, and the DUP gave her a majority anyway. But it's just, the British government do not seem to know what they're doing. Half of the MPs in Parliament seem to have no idea what's going on. Look, I remember sitting watching the amendment votes at, a few weeks back in Westminster, and there was multiple amendments saying block a no-deal Brexit that got rejected. And then an amendment that blocked a no-deal Brexit got approved. What's the point in blocking an amendment A that says let's not have a no-deal Brexit, and then approving amendment G that says let's not have a no-deal Brexit? Just approve the first one and save everyone so much time.
You seem to be biting at the bit here, Luke.
Yeah. Oh God, the Conservatives, they might as well be blindfolded driving a car into a brick wall, because that's how they're running the country at the moment. Because Theresa May is, she's quite possibly one of the worst prime ministers that this country has had the misfortune to have. And I'm not going to make any references or anything to a certain other female Conservative Prime Minister that we used to have that messed up the UK, but I think we all know who I'm talking about.
Mrs. Thatcher.
You're a mean one, Mrs. Grinch.
But some would argue that she's managed to hold the Conservative Party together so far.
I'd disagree with that statement. I'd say, if anything, she's driven the party more in opposite directions, because you've got the ones that are Remainers, you've got the ones that are just kind of, we're just going to do whatever we can to fix the country, and then you've got like moderate ones that wanted to leave the EU, and then you've got the Brexiteers, and as I've been saying, it's all for one and none for you with them, because like me wanting to leave the EU, I try and disassociate myself with the guys like
The stereotype of a hard Brexiteer.
hard Brexiteer,
Boris.
he must be a racist, he must be all this, he must go out with his yellow jacket and his red armband and beat some minorities for kicks. If you hadn't guessed by now, I don't do that, so please stop saying I do that. But I think
The squabbling has hurt this process within the Conservative Party. Theresa May's not holding this government together, you
the
think?
thing is, the vultures, quote unquote, they're not even going in for the kill, because you look at Jeremy Corbyn's approval ratings, they've plummeted in the last few years, and they plummeted in the past few years, and we've got a broken Conservative Party, we've got a Labour Party with a leader that people don't want to elect, and so who are we going to vote for? The Liberal Democrats.
So, just while you mention the opposition parties, Victoria, do you think the opposition parties have hurt this process? Do you think they've not helped enough? They've not talked enough?
I think maybe they haven't really spoke to people before. I don't know. Just I feel like they have helped in some ways, but they haven't. They have done what they could, but for example, like the opposition party like SNP, they're only in Scotland, so they can't really say anything. Oh yeah, by the way, England, you should vote for this. Like they can't really affect anything that happens on the south side of like Scotland, UK. But but Labour, they are kind of also what I found out that they were kind of split as well about all of this and about Brexit.
There's a lot of division.
Yeah. So I think everything, because of this whole Brexit and what happened, like I think a lot of parties just kind of started splitting each other up. Like Conservatives, like Luke mentioned, how they got split up because they wanted to remain, but these ones wanted to leave, and it was kind of like a feeling that they just kind of started damaging each other instead of actually helping the whole process. They were just kind of like trying to fight each other, and they didn't really care what others like around them were saying. Like all the population that was like, like they were just kind of trying to fight each other instead of actually helping the people that live in this country.
Victoria did mention the Labour Party currently being divided. Christopher, do you think we'll see new leaders by, say, this time next year?
It is entirely possible, but I would say only in the two main parties. I don't think there doesn't appear to be any schism in the SNP. They do appear to be very united. We hate Brexit. Moan the indie ref. But
united behind a common front of Alex Salmond's innocent.
That's not really a topic for this debate. Alex Salmond being innocent or guilty doesn't really come into that. And as the British justice system goes, innocent until proven guilty. So we do not assume anything at this time.
Do you think that would, this whole allegation, it only is allegations, but he has been charged, do you think that would damage the whole SNP's drive for independence, since he was such a leading figure?
It is entirely possible that it could, yes. However,
do you think it will?
I don't think it will at this time, but I think if he was to be found guilty, then it could be quite damaging, and the SNP would again need to put Indie Ref 2 on a slight back burner a bit. Focus on the day job, as Colonel Ruth would say.
Colonel Ruth.
Yes.
On that point of Christopher mentioning Indie Ref 2, look, would you support a second Scottish independence referendum if it meant remaining in the EU?
No, I would not. And I didn't support it last time because it just didn't appeal to me. the whole like division of the UK. But I'm sorry, I know you're an SNP, and I know you are quite a prominent, like really voting for SNP. But Nicola Sturgeon, what she did after the Brexit vote was announced was idiotic. Announcing trying to push for a second referendum, trying to divide the country more than it already had been with the Brexit referendum. It was
Not the correct thing to do. In a time
thing to do.
where Mrs May seems to be pushing for unity in the country, you believe that was breeding division.
Yeah.
Fair
Now,
enough.
I must admit, I actually agree with you. I think it was a silly thing to do at the time. I think now would have been a better time to start the push for it, which has happened. The Scottish Government and the Scottish Parliament have given Nicola Sturgeon approval to seek a Section 30 to allow for a second independence referendum. So the process has begun. But the thing that I find strangest probably about the independence thing is although the Scottish Parliament have approved it, which therefore means the Scottish people have approved it because we elect the Scottish Parliament, we then need the UK government to approve it. Now, last time I checked, the majority of Scottish seats in the UK Parliament are taken up by SNP, and there's only a minority of Labour and the Conservatives.
There's the bell.
Yep, there's the bell that gives the podcast the name, 2 Men and a Bell. We'll wait until it stops ringing before I continue my point. But, yep, as I was saying, the SNP have got a majority in the the UK Parliament in terms of Scottish seats, but the Conservative Party have got the power to just turn around and say, no, you're not getting your referendum because we don't want you to. Now is not the time, as Mrs May proudly said in 2017, I believe it was.
So, Victoria, what do you think? Would you like to see an independent Scotland from I don't want to say an outsider's perspective, because you're very much just as Scottish as any of us.
Yeah.
But would you support a referendum?
Back when it was happening, it felt like it was quite pointless. I didn't know what was the point of leaving, although I knew that Scotland was always dependent on what the UK was saying, and they couldn't decide on their own. But, for example, like if it happened right now, and if Brexit happened, because I'm sure that a referendum can't, like the independence referendum can't be like, oh, before Brexit, so it would have to be after Brexit. And I feel like it would still not really help, because after we all leave EU, and then all of a sudden Scotland leaves the UK, the Europe said that they won't take Scotland as its own back, so they would be just left by on their own. So I feel like it would just kind of damage Scotland in a way, but it would also damage England, because England is really like dependent on Scotland's things that they provide them with, I guess.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that point, because right, UK leaving the EU, that takes us out the single market. Then the UK are wanting to push for more global trade connections. If Scotland breaks off from the rest of the UK, we don't get those trade connections when we leave. So we are on our own, and it's a bit more independent than I think most people would like to be, because we'll have the amount of goods that we ship in from around the world, like China, America, like all around, even from Europe and stuff like that. When the UK leaves that single market, a lot of moderate Brexiteers were kind of pushing for, we can maybe stay in the single market, because they know how important that would be as a lifeline to the UK while we still keep going. But if we leave that, if we leave the UK, and the UK's not even got in the single market, what hope do we have? We're not really prepared for a totally independent Scotland. If Scotland was in a better financial situation, if it had better trade with foreign powers, America, Russia, China, then I'm sure a referendum could be feasible, but right now it's just not.
I said before you come in, Christopher, I was just going to point out that some recent statistics pointed out that Scotland's current natural population is declining. and Scotland currently does rely on people coming in to keep the economy going. What do you think on that, Christopher?
Just before I come to those statistics that you presented, it's a well-documented fact, the criteria that you need to get into the EU. And it's been said by a few EU chiefs that Scotland, if it were to go independent, would meet most of those criteria, and so wouldn't need to do the whole rigmarole of waiting to get in, let's say, Turkey. Also, to remind you both that when Scotland, if Scotland votes to go independent, they don't just leave the UK the day after. They aren't just abandoned.
I know.
There is a waiting process, very similar to the Article 50 process, in terms of leaving the EU. There would be many negotiations. We would decide the currency. We wouldn't just be starting off with absolutely nothing. We would have the opportunity to turn around and say to countries, we're going to be a country soon. Would you like to trade with us? We have this, this and this. You have that, that and that. Let's do a deal. It wouldn't just be, oh, there you go. Be gone, Scotland.
Well, you think about it, what does Scotland really have as like natural resources
We
that we
have
could actually trade? Because we forget oil, because most of the world's switching to like eco-energy.
well, except the oil, we do have other cosmetic, let's say, exports.
What cosmetic exports could you...
Well, sorry, cosmetic maybe wasn't the best word. Domestic, I think, was more.
Again.
Bread in Scotland. Haggis is probably a main export. Shortbread, Scotch whisky, Orkney, black pudding, all the foodstuffs and things.
The service industries.
Yeah, the hospitality industries would be quite good,
Right,
which got in
so
terms of supporting
black pudding.
Scotland.
Other than Scotland and the UK, what other country mainly eats black pudding in the world?
That I'm unaware, but it is possible.
That is... It almost sounds like you're wanting to trade with England, and that doesn't sound very independent.
There's a difference between trade and being run by.
So, Victoria, what do you think?
About
This whole Scotland independence, and
they
they were just bringing up that Scotland really doesn't have too many resources. But do you think Scotland could go it alone?
I think on a certain level they could if they were prepared enough for it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the Scotland is always providing the whole, like, the UK with their stuff that, like, UK needs. So, like, for example, the whole UK would not survive without Scotland, in my opinion. So they have resources that they could send out to other countries, in my opinion, because of the fact that they do that to England and all that, the whole of the UK. But I think if they're prepared enough to leave UK, if they have everything sorted out for them, then go on, leave.
Fair enough.
But in my opinion, they shouldn't leave just after the Brexit, like a year after Brexit. I think they should take time.
Okay, I want to move on to a slightly different point, and I draw your attention to a recent EU spokesman who caused a little bit of controversy when he actually referred to Gibraltar as a colony of the British. And I want the wider question that I wanted to ask here is that the EU's made a number of comments. Do you think this has damaged the process that we went into? Look, you seem to be.
The EU are doing everything they can to slow down the process and try and stop it, because I don't know if it's a case of, oh, I don't want you to leave me, or oh, let's make this as painful as possible for them. But they seem to be going kind of mixed emotions for both ways, because you think about like countries like Germany and France, they're like, oh, we need the UK and the EU. It's like the equivalent of, oh, I don't think I'm going to come out tonight, but oh, the night's not the same without you. But Spain's like the angry ex-girlfriend that's just like, fine, I want all my stuff back. And it's like, and the thing is, no, we won Gibraltar fair and square, we're keeping it. No.
But what do you think, Christopher?
Yes, I actually agree with Luke. The EU do appear to be making an example of the UK. And it's like, other countries want to leave, this is what you're going to get. This is what faces you. You face a bill for your financial obligations, you face this, you face that. Now, a lot of Brexiteers have been complaining about the bill. I'm not too fussed about it because I looked into it. It is fair. We have signed up to say we'll give you so much money to do this project, this project, and this project, and we need to honour that. We can't just turn around and be like, no, screw you. You're not getting your money. So we do kind of need to pay it, but the EU does appear to be trying their best to make it hell for the UK.
So, Victoria, what do you think?
I mean, I know that I come from EU, but I still have negative opinions about it because I feel like they just kind of want to keep it going just because they feel like, oh, maybe UK will change their mind and stay with us, because the UK is a very powerful country that they need to kind of be like, oh, look, we have UK. But I feel like there's other, like, they should. That's why I'm saying that UK should not leave EU. Although, and I know EU is quite like, they are really, pushy about things. They don't like to listen to other countries. They just kind of want to do it on their own. But I feel like it would be much better if another country left the EU, and because the EU would not care enough, and it would be my country.
You think that... Oh, okay, fair enough. But you think because Britain's such an integral big provider to the EU, that they are making this intentionally difficult?
Yeah, so that the UK will be like, oh, maybe we should, like, they think that UK will make, they will change their mind if they like take time and push the Brexit more.
Another point I wanted to make, and I know you've got a lot of strong opinions on this, Luke, is that both the French President and the German Chancellor have been pushing for a more centralised Europe. They're both very pro-European. And a lot of this has come from President Trump, and the EU has said a lot more that they can no longer rely on America. Do you think that it would be better for Britain to be part of a more centralised Europe? Or do you think it's better to kind of isolate ourselves more and be more... I don't know, it's your opinion. What do you think?
Funny you should ask this. But I'll refrain from making the joke I made earlier in the article that I had to cut out because it was a bit too...
Shameless plug, by the way. Go check the JMAC blog to find Luke's article.
Yeah, it'll be
The
up.
edited one.
It will be up soon with censorship and all. But
Big black lines redacted.
yeah, it's like my report cards. But
So you're saying?
yeah,
Do you think it's better for Britain to be part of this centralised Europe?
I don't think so, to be honest. Because centralised Europe, it's like we have our own culture, we have our own way.
Do you think we're less like Europeans and more Americanised?
I think, well, when you think about it, we are more Americanised because we think of like America, they're mostly English speaking, and Canada, English speaking again, like some part, northern Mexico, mostly English speaking, like the English part of Mexico that we had was obviously English speaking. And well, no other country in Europe speaks English. Whereas most of we're one tiny island, yet we're one of the highest speaking languages in the world. So,
I was going to say, I don't mean to cast any assumptions on Luke's character, but one of a lot of people who've criticised the Brexit debate is talking about sort of people wanting a Pax Britannia again, the Britain, it's a leading nation. Do you think that's been a massive thing in this debate, Christopher?
Yes, because when you looked at the voting statistics just after the EU referendum that showed the breakdowns of what ages voted what, you did find that a lot of young people voted Remain, and it was the older people that remember the good old days. Britain was doing it alone. We crushed the Germans once, we crushed them twice, we'll do it again. Let's go it alone. That was the people who voted Brexit more so. Young people seem to be more pro-EU because it's what we've grown up with. It's all we've ever known. That's the argument that I've heard a lot from my parents. It's all you've ever known, so of course you're going to like it. Not necessarily. I think I'm pretty clued up on the topic and I've made my own opinion from that. But it does appear to be a lot of let's go back to the good old days.
Victoria, I just want to bring you in here because do you think that, obviously being Polish, people in the continent are more supportive of the EU than Britain is? Have you found when you came to Britain that Britain is very much trying to separate itself from the EU?
A bit. I guess it was always like when I came here. It was like I was really pointing out, oh yeah, you're from EU, like you're not from here. I'm like, well, I know. And like whenever like I was speaking out, oh, but like I live here now and I'm part of this country, a lot of people find out, no, you're still European. You're still we're still like you are still a European. You're not like basically part of this country. You don't have papers that says you're part of this country. So I guess it was a slight thing that I noticed that they were still kind of like, are we really part of the EU? Like, do we really want to be part of the EU? And then later on, when Brexit happened, it was kind of like, now I get it. They really don't want to be here. They don't want to be part of it. And I get why they don't want to be part of it, because the politicians in EU are really like, they're not democratic, and they just they're there, they don't listen, they just do what they want to do. Some of them abuse the power, like Donald Tusk, for example. He was the Prime Minister of Poland, and then he decided to abuse the power there and then move on to the European Parliament.
And he's currently the President of the European Council.
Yes, and a lot of people, especially from Poland, they're like, what are you doing there? You're damaging all the Europe, because he is damaging because he's abusing the power, such as the other ones that were not paid by other people. It's like the House of Lords here. They're not democratic, and they should, in my opinion, they should be picked by the people, and then it would probably make Europe better and more like well ruled. I guess.
I just want to bring.
Can I just follow up on a quick thing there? What you said about when you came to Britain, it was like, well, you're not British. I would say I'd probably expect that from the other EU countries, though, with Brits going there. Let's say a Brit were to go to Spain, would the Spanish necessarily turn around and be like, oh, you're a Spaniard now, you live here? That's like, well, he is still British, he's just living in Spain.
The point I was trying to hearken to is the people on the continent tend to think of themselves more as Europeans than an individual country. I did want to hearken back to a point Victoria made about that the EU current system is undemocratic. And I wanted to point out that when the EU was founded, the Parliament had no legislative ability, and that has certainly improved. And I want to get your opinions on this, Luke. Because do you think it's better to remain in the EU in the hopes that the system will become more democratic? Or do you think it's better to get out now?
I think it's best to get out now, because we only need to look at Article 13 to say that it's becoming one of the most undemocratic systems in the world. It's an oligarchy, it's not a democracy, because with these things like Article 13, with the restrictions being imposed on European citizens, I think that it's just best if we jump ship before it goes down.
What do you think of this, Christopher?
It is a bit undemocratic, yes, it's like the House of Lords. But the way I can see it is we elect the Parliament elects the Commission. I'm not quite sure who elects the Council. I'm not sure if it's the Commission that elects the Council, but it is basically all elected in some way. But at the same time, I can understand where the undemocratic thing is, because it's like the Commission can make decisions on their own without consulting the Parliament, which I don't quite understand. So I think it might be best to kind of abandon that. Yes, we do have the completely outdated House of Lords, which we really don't need. That's why we've got a House of Commons. But yeah, I think it might be better to leave, and if it does improve, we can always reapply.
This does lead me on to another point, which is quite intrinsically linked to the kind of what you were suggesting, the undemocratic nature of the EU. Is do you think the EU does listen to its citizens?
No.
Would anyone like to pick this up?
No, there's no way that it listens to its citizens. The MEPs get get elected in through, oh, we can help make Europe a better place, or with the UKIP MEPs, oh, we'll fight for Britain in Europe and we'll try and get out. There's just one problem. They've not done it properly. None of the MEPs have. And when they've been electing these new commissioners and stuff like that, these people have been going, how can we control Europe better? Not make Europe a better place, how can we control it better? I know. Let's put some wee cheeky restrictions on like freedom of privacy and stuff like that and call it counter-terrorism. That'll be okay. Nobody will notice that. They'll say it's fine. Don't worry.
I just wanted to, kind of, as a closing kind of section, I wanted to get everybody's opinion on this as a leave and a remain. What do you think is now the best possible action the government could take? Would you like to go from a remain point of view? What's the best possible next steps?
Just before I answer your question, I'd like to come to what Luke said about the MEPs. It is true, I don't even know who my MEP is. I've never met them, I've never seen them in the constituency.
I don't even
So how can you
remember,
represent people without showing up? But in terms of next steps, I would say go for... Mrs May's deal is a mess. I've read through some articles of it. It's an absolute shambles. And it will never get approved by Parliament. So I would say the most logical thing just now would be to extend Article 50, even just by a few months, to try and get a better deal, with the EU, if the EU are willing to renegotiate. If the EU aren't willing to renegotiate, just go. The deal's a mess. It would probably hurt us more than help us. So I'd say if they're not willing to renegotiate, no deal Brexit.
So, Victor, what do you think the next steps should be?
I think I agree with Christopher. I think they should possibly extend Brexit and make a better deal that pleases everyone. I think that they should also consider people like, I'm gonna be very selfish there, but people like me who are here and might have a risk of not being able to live here because of the application form, and if it's incorrectly filled in, then I would have to leave the country. So I think that they should do something that would not damage the people that help this country. Because I get that there's some people that come from Europe that are damaging this country, but there's some people that are trying to improve it, just like I am.
Okay, so what do you think? What do you think the next steps the British government should take?
I'm just going to say straight hard Brexit, because as Chris was saying, Mrs May's deal and the Chequers deal, it's an absolute mess. But if we try to renegotiate, then the EU are just going to make it harder and harder, and the bills will just keep piling up. Just, you're making us extend. It's more money we have to spend. We need more money from you. It's going to make the divorce bill a whole lot more painful for everyone, and to the point where everyone just gets so sick of it. They're just like, fine, we'll stay, and then we're left with a big bill we need to pay to EU Parliament. So we should just leave.
I did want to say one final question. In short answers, please. Do you think, and I'll go around the table, do you think it will be a Conservative government that takes us out of Brexit? Look.
No.
No?
Yes.
No.
Oh, fair enough.
The only reason I say yes is I don't think Theresa May is silly enough to call a general election before Brexit.
Fair enough.
Yep. So, that concludes the first ever JMAC podcast, Two Men and a Bell. I'd like to thank Luke and Victoria for coming along and joining us. Next episode is yet to be decided. It will probably be something mundane, nowhere near as exciting as this.
Tax reform.
Yeah, hopefully not as political, but you never know. Might be something on
Bread.
teapots or
Teapots.
bread. Yes,
I think we should do a
break out the
episode on
teapots episode.
Could do it.
But once we know what's happening, we'll be sure to make an announcement on the JMAC blog, which, as I'm sure you all know where to find it, that's most likely where you found this podcast. If not, a link will be in the description of the YouTube video that we've uploaded this on. Also, feel free to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. The handle is at St Aidan's JMAC, and if you really can't find the blog, just Google JMAC, the blog experience. So, thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to leave what you think in the comments, and we will get back to you with a reply as soon as possible. Any suggestions for the next topic, also leave them down there. Thank you very much.
We'll see you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.